Rev up your engine! Alright, my grandson bought this BMW convertible. And horror of horrors, it's a BMW convertible. Believe it or not, it really only has 73,908 miles on it. Now, yeah, you can't believe people as far as you can throw them half the time. I've driven this thing. The suspension, the engine, the transmission, it really feels like that's the real mileage. I've been working on BMW since the 1960s, and this thing is really low mileage. Now, granted, when he bought it, the hood didn't look like this. It cost him $100 in materials. He watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and he painted the hood over. And sure, the dash is cracked for $100 on Amazon. He's got a new dash coming that goes completely over and just glues over the top. But of course, it's a BMW, so what you really get these for are the engines. We'll open the hood. Oh, well, I forgot they open the other way. We got to move the camera. Yeah, he's been kind of sloppy. There's the compound. He's going to have to clean all that off. This is the heart of a BMW. A straight 6-cylinder fuel-injected engine. Let's start it up. Now, this is a 1988. Old as the hills. It only needs one thing. The valves adjusted. This is an old car. It's an old style engine. It has screws, lock nuts. You have to adjust all the valves manually. It still runs good. No backfire or anything. I hear a little bit of clattering. If I owned a car like this, I'd be a fanatic. First thing I'd do would be adjust the valves. Now, he also had to change the fuel pump as old as this. People always say, BMWs, what a pain in the butt to fix. Not these old ones. Take the seat out. It's under there in a little access panel. Not like a Ford or GM where you gotta drop the gas tank. They actually were well designed back in the day. Remember, this is the 80s. This isn't 2020. Now, he also changed the brake master cylinder, but look, it's a simple system. It has a regular booster, not a nitrogen booster. It doesn't have crazy anti-lock brakes that you have to deal with. He bought the master cylinder at an AutoZone, $110. You don't have to buy BMW parts for these things. They've been around so long and there's so many interchangeable parts. There is a big aftermarket for them. What's that strange noise? Okay, it needs a blower motor too. You expect these things. But look, it's already got built-in air conditioning. It's called a convertible. All the air conditioning you'd ever need. That's a classic rear-wheel drive sports car. Let's take it for a spin. So start her up. No backup camera. But then again, it's a convertible. You got a pretty good view. Now, the first thing you notice is it idles so smooth. That's what these 6-cylinder engines are going for. Smoothness. And they last an awful long time. And with 70-something thousand miles, this thing's got a lot of life. You hear the transmission shifting? You hardly hear the transmission shift because it still works perfectly fine. This all leads me to conclude that that is the real mileage of this car. Now, of course, these things are made for the twisties. We'll wait till traffic gets out of the way. There we go. It may be old, but it still handles quite well. No problem taking corners in this thing. Now, these are the ultimate cruising vehicles. As you're going to see, we'll do a fast takeoff. They're not race cars. They're not made for racing. They're made for high-speed touring. They go, but it's not until you get to the higher end speed that they really show what they're good for. They're good for cruising along on the highway very comfortably. It's a very comfortable touring car. It does have back seats. You can fit people there. It isn't that tiny. It feels safe. It's a heavy car. It's got a lot of weight to it, but it's smooth. You can get in this thing, drive to California, and your back isn't gonna hurt you. They used to know how to make them in Deutschland. Now, yeah, this was a barn find in Tennessee out in the country. There's things lying around if you look hard enough. I really believe this is the actual mileage of the car. Sat for years, so everything's cracked and stuff, but mechanically, this thing runs like a jet engine. Now, the rear view mirror isn't here anymore, but what the heck? It's a BMW convertible. Who cares what's behind you? The only thing you care about is what's in front of you. Now, this isn't automatic, but if it had been a 5-speed manual tranny, those make pretty good drift cars. And now you know why they use these straight 6-cylinder engines all these years. They're extremely smooth, and they can basically last forever if you keep oil and coolant in them. Now, there's some smooth cruising. for only $1,500. Let's face it, on a modern BMW, you're not even gonna get a set of wheels for $1,500. And this still has the original wheels. Like I said, they used to make them good in Deutschland. Sure, they're not race cars, they're touring sports cars. They're very comfortable, they handle well, they get decent gas mileage for a vehicle that weighs as much as this thing weighs. Now, by modern standards, they're gas hogs. They only get 21 on the highway and 16 in town because they're a heavy vehicle. But on the other hand, solid, well-built vehicle. It can last a long time. And if you could find a barn find like this that's got less than 80,000 miles on it, our grandson's probably going to keep it as a toy for a while. He could sell it on and make some money, but you're not going to find that many of them, that kind of low mileage, anywhere these days. Just don't be put off by BMW's cheap plastic dashes. You can get covers for them. You can always get the back reupholstered if you want, or cover it up with something. He even painted the back trunk, but he forgot to take this ding out. And that's my one advice about classic convertibles. Don't become a fanatic. You can have fun with them, you can get them cheap enough, they're in this kind of shape, they could last quite some time. Just don't be a fanatic. You can always find something wrong with an old car. You could do it all over if you wanted, or you could do like his, make it presentable. Have fun driving it around, and don't worry. You get an old car like this in many areas, they're antiques. You can get dirt cheap insurance. Saw a guy in Rhode Island, he had one. He was paying $380 a year insurance. A classic car. You can save a lot of money if you can find a barn find with low mileage on insurance alone. Because it's a fun sports car, but it's only got 168 horsepower. Plenty enough to move it around and have fun, especially at highway speeds. But with lower horsepower comes lower insurance rates. Less chance of you going crazy and spinning out, running into a tree or something, or somebody else. You have a fun car with really cheap insurance. Now, if they were still making BMWs today like they were then, I tell people to buy them. Unfortunately, they don't. You gotta get into a time machine to get a decent one like this. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Sam Poet says, my engine overheated without the gauge showing it. I got an LS400, had a leak in the upper hose. My mechanic said the rubber hose was completely detached from the system. He fixed the leak and was worried it might have engine damage. What do you think? Well, he's actually telling you the truth. That's what happens. If a hose falls right off, you lose the water so fast that it's gone. Your temperature gauge on your engine works by the heat of water. So if the water's gone, there's nothing on it that's going to tell you the water's getting too hot, because the only thing that's in there is air, and the temperature gauge does not work with air. I've had that happen to a few customers over the years. A hose blew off or a radiator exploded on a highway, and they looked and the temperature gauge didn't get hot. They kept driving. They drove until the engine stopped running. That was the end of the car. It can happen. Now, what you want to do is watch my video, how to tell if your head gasket is blown, Scotty. Watch it, get the kit, cost you $30 on Amazon. If you price around, if the fluid goes from blue to yellow, yes, it's blown the head gasket in the engine, and you're either going to spend a fortune rebuilding that engine. I'd say get rid of your Lexus now if it's still running okay, but if it doesn't change color, it didn't damage it at all. G.H. George says, my lights dim while I'm idling. I got a 95 Civic. The lights go dim when I'm driving. Alternator's fine, got to check. What should I expect? All right, go and get both the battery and the alternator load tested. That's normally what does it. And make sure that the negative and positive battery terminals are tight, because if the power or ground is loose, it'll dim when you're idling. It's almost always the alternator not charging right if it does it only when it's idling. But a really weak battery can do that, so get that load tested. And also, if the ground wiring system is bad, the lights will dim. So go to the headlights. They've got power and ground. Check the ground. Maybe the connector's rusted or something. Make sure they have ground. You need 12-volt positive, and you need 12-volt ground, because if you don't have a circuit that completes it, electricity doesn't work. That's why they call them electrical circuits. They go round and round. Jay Carson, 2001 says, I was curious, do you have experience with the Innova 3100 scan tool, about $100? I'm getting rid of my Foxwell and I want to replace it with the Innova. I got him a fixed POS a few years prior and got one for him, and I found out it wasn't worth squat. All right, yes, that's a good scan tool. For $100, it's probably one of the better $100 scan tools. But I'm using their $300 scan tool, and it blows me away. It does all kinds of stuff. If you only want to spend $100, it's a good scan tool. No arguing that. But for $100, if he's got a smartphone, get him a Blue Driver. These Canadian guys, Blue Driver. The Canadians write all the software. Yeah, they're made in China, but they use a good company to make them, but all the software is done in Canada. Blue Driver. It's better than the 3100 for $100, and there's a 99 bucks, and they give you free updates forever. It's a really good company. Try the Blue Driver one out. It's okay, but the Blue Driver's better for $100. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.